You know, we throw around the word intelligent all the time, but what does it actually mean? For over a century, some of the smartest people on the planet, psychologists, have been debating that exact question. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain and unpack the whole concept of intelligence, from the wild theories to the actual tests.
So let me ask you, do you think intelligence is just something you're born with, like you either have it or you don't? Or that someone with a high IQ can just walk into any situation and crush it? Well, we're about to dig into some of those common beliefs and see what the science really has to say.
All right, so let's start with a solid foundation. Psychologists have a pretty specific definition. They see intelligence not as just knowing a bunch of facts, but as this incredible capacity, the ability to really understand the world around you, to think things through logically, and, this is the key part, to use whatever you've got to solve a problem. It's not about what's in your brain, it's about how you use it.
And that leads us straight into the biggest, longest-running debate in the entire field. Is intelligence just one single overarching ability? Like a master key that unlocks all problems? Or is it more like a big toolbox, filled with a bunch of different, specialized skills? This question, believe it or not, has been at the heart of psychology for ages.
So you basically had two major camps. On one side, you had pioneers like Alfred Binet. They were convinced that intelligence was this one big global thing. But then, on the other side, you had folks like Charles Spearman, who started to say, hang on a second, I think it's more complicated than that. He argued that it's probably made up of a bunch of different abilities working together.
Let's dive a little deeper into Spearman's idea, because it was a real game changer. He came up with the two-factor theory. He said we all have a G factor, which stands for general intelligence. Think of this as the basic horsepower of your brain's engine. But then, he said we also have a bunch of S factors for specific abilities. These are your specialized skills, like being great at math, or having a knack for music, or being amazing with words.
And then, other researchers like Cattell and Horn came along and gave us this fantastic analogy that just makes it all click. They broke it down into fluid and crystallized intelligence. Fluid intelligence is like your brain's hardware, your raw processing power. It's what you rely on when you're faced with a totally new problem you've never seen before. And crystallized intelligence, that's your software. It's the library of knowledge, skills, and experiences that you build up over your entire life.
Okay, so you've got all these different theories about what intelligence is. Naturally, the next big question was, can we measure it? Can we put a number on it? And this quest led to probably one of the most famous and, let's be honest, controversial inventions in psychology, the IQ.
Now, to understand IQ, you first have to get this really cool concept called mental age. This has nothing to do with your birthday or how old you feel inside. It's purely a test score. So let's say a 10-year-old takes a test and aces the questions that an average 12-year-old can answer. Well, that 10-year-old has a mental age of 12. It's all about performance.
And the second piece of the puzzle is way simpler. It's your chronological age. This is exactly what it sounds like. It's just how many years you've been on the planet. See? That's the easy part.
Then in 1912, a psychologist named William Stern had a brilliant insight. He realized that the important thing wasn't just your mental age, but the relationship, the ratio between your mental age and your chronological age. So he came up with this formula. You take the mental age, divided by the chronological age, and multiply by 100, and boom, you've got the intelligence quotient, or IQ. It's a way to compare your performance to others your age.
Okay, let's see how this actually works with some real numbers. Look at Isha. She's 10 years old, but she's performing like a 12-year-old. So 12 divided by 10 times 100 gives her an IQ of 120, which is above average. Makes sense, right? Now, Ankit is 10, and he's performing right at a 10-year-old level. So his mental and chronological ages match, giving him that perfect average score of 100. And then we have Rajesh. He's also 10, but his performance is more like an 8-year-old's. So his IQ comes out to 80.
That formula was revolutionary, but it raises a question, doesn't it? How do psychologists even figure out someone's mental age to begin with? Well, it turns out they developed a whole toolkit of different tests to do just that, and they mostly fall into two big categories.
On one hand, you've got individual tests. This is a one-on-one situation, just you and a highly trained examiner. It allows them to get a really in-depth look at how you think. But then you have group tests, where you can test tons of people all at the same time. These became incredibly important, for example, during World War I with things like the Army Alpha test, when they had to quickly figure out the skills of thousands and thousands of recruits. And this really gets at a classic trade-off. An individual one-on-one test gives you this incredibly rich picture. The examiner can build a connection that can pick up on your mood and that can get a better sense of your creativity. The downside, they take a ton of time, they cost a lot of money, and you need a specialist to do them. It's just not practical for large groups.
So we've talked about all these fascinating theories and all the different kinds of tests, but let's get down to it. So what? Why does any of this matter in the real world? Well, it turns out the applications of this stuff are way more common than you might think.
I mean, sure, it's no surprise they're used in schools to help kids who are struggling or to find those who need a bigger challenge, and they're used in clinics and for hiring, but wait a second, weather forecasting? What's that doing on the list? It sounds totally random, but when you think about it, it makes perfect sense. Any field that involves juggling massive amounts of complicated, fast-changing information needs people whose brains are wired for that kind of high-level problem solving. But here's the thing, our understanding of intelligence isn't finished. It's not a closed book. It's constantly changing and expanding. In fact, the very definition of what it means to be smart is getting a whole lot bigger than just one little number on an IQ test. We're now talking seriously about things like social intelligence, your street smarts, your ability to read a room and navigate complex social situations. Then there's emotional intelligence, which is absolutely huge, understanding and managing your own emotions and those of other people. And of course, the elephant in the room, artificial intelligence, which is forcing us to rethink what intelligence even is from the ground up.
And that's the big question I want to leave you with. As AI gets more and more powerful, as the machines we build can learn and reason and solve problems better than we can, what's left for us? What part of intelligence will be uniquely human? What will it really mean to be intelligent in the world that's coming?